Right. It's 2 after, and I definitely want to be mindful of all of your time. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm going to drop the link to the slide deck in the chat one more time. I don't have a moderator for this session, so if someone joins us and needs a link to the slide deck, if one of you wouldn't mind just copying and pasting it for others to have access to it. But we have 45 minutes together, and I'm just going to be quite honest with you. I usually do this topic in over an hour and a half. I'm super passionate about it. And you'll have access to so many different resources that you can take back to your school sites, whether it's a little bit or a lot of different ideas. But I definitely want you to have something that you can take and feel free to use it at your disposal, whatever capacity that you work with students. Normally, I speak directly to school counselors, but I know we have educators, teachers, AVID coordinators joining us today, and I'm so glad that you're here because career and post-secondary planning is not just a school counseling thing. It's definitely something that we all work together to support students, including families. So again, thank you so much for being here. Before I go any further, I want to definitely send a shout out and a thank you to Jewel Clark. I was sitting in a conference presentation years ago when Jewel presented on this very topic of Ikigai, and I was just wowed and astonished about how it shifted my focus and how to support students with their post-secondary planning. And I really wanted to thank her. She does such amazing work for the County Office of Education. And I have a link to her website. But if you're not on her mailing list, please add yourself, reach out to her. I think she might have a link on the website as well. She sends out wonderful information on CTE, career pathways, and there is a virtual conference coming up. So if you haven't signed up for that, definitely take the time to do that as well. Jewel's awesome. Thank you. As far as today, I won't go over all of these learning objectives, but really I hope that you walk away loving Ikigai as much as I do. I'll be sharing some resources with you, and hopefully you'll start thinking about maybe how you can incorporate one or two little aspects into your classrooms, into your school counseling programs. Throughout the presentation, whenever you see a link button, I've hyperlinked a resource for you, and I've also put together a resource folder. One of my strengths is collecting and sharing resources. I really love to do that. And it's going to be linked in the slide deck for you. I would recommend not trying to dig into it quite yet because it could be a little bit overwhelming. But I'll be highlighting some of the resources that I've used in the past and that I really enjoy when doing this work around Ikigai. So a little bit about me. I am currently the MTSS coordinator / COSA in San Marcos Unified School District, but previously as a middle school counselor for many years. I also serve as the vice chair for the California Association of School Counselors. I'm a lecturer at San Diego State University teaching future school counselors. I also work for Hatching Results as a professional learning specialist. So I wear a lot of different hats in school counseling, and that's what I do. But for me, the most important thing and really what drives my work, my why, is why I do it. So I'm a first generation college student. I don't know if we have any Bruins or Aztecs in the house today. My parents are both from El Salvador, and today, the first day of Latinx Hispanic Heritage Month, it's definitely something that I'm super proud of and really drives my passion for supporting our first generation students. I'm also the mom to a teenager on the autism spectrum, and prior to becoming a school counselor, I was a parent liaison for many years, supporting in particular families that have students with IEPs and in special education. And really this drives my heart and my passion for doing work around inclusion and equity and access for all of our students. And so as we begin to talk about planning for the school year, wherever you are in the process, I know it's been so overwhelming at schools across my district, across the county, as we're supporting our students. It's so important that you take a time And I invite you to take the time to reflect about why you do this work and how you're going to find little opportunities to feed your why this academic year, because it is often feeling like we're so reactive and we're just responding to the next crisis, the things, the curriculum that we have to get through. But so important that if you take a little bit of time to reflect upon your why and how you're going to feed your purpose in this work, because it is so essential that we maintain a close connection to our whys when it's especially challenging, right? When we're supporting our students and our families and our school communities. Because I believe, and Simon Sinek said it best, right? People don't buy into what you do, but why you do it. And that passion, I think, really comes out in the work that we do as educators with our families. So let's dive into Ikigai and why I love it so much. So I'm going to start off with one of my favorite quotes here. The two most important days are the day that you were born and then the day you find out why. And as educators, oftentimes our Ikigai, our purpose, is linked to the work that we do in education. So what is Ikigai? I'm going to ask you to take on the count of 3 to just say it. You don't have to unmute, but on the count of 3, I want you to say Ikigai. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Ikigai. It's almost impossible not to smile when you say Ikigai. So roughly translated, Ikigai is a Japanese word, and it means your life and your purpose. So your life's worth, your life's purpose, your reason for being. The way, and it's dated back from all the way back to 794. It's been around for a very long time, but the way that it got brought into Western culture, that we were made of it, is this National Geographic explorer, his name is Dan Buettner, went out to explore what he calls these blue zone areas where there's large populations of centenarians, so people who lived past 100, and kind of wanted to know what their secrets were for living past 100 and living very fruitful, productive lives. So he wrote a book and he did a TED talk on this subject, and those are both hyperlinked here for you. But what he took away is he went to this blue zone in Japan, in Okinawa, and they shared their philosophy about Ikigai. And then another guy, a blogger, watched this TED talk, was really inspired, and he came up with this Venn diagram that we now kind of know as the representation of Ikigai. But it really talked about how they focus on what they love to do, what they're good at, what the world or their community needs, and also how they get paid. So in the Japanese culture in Ikigai, it's not financial payment, but how it fills them and fills their soul and their purpose. So that's kind of what paid means. But it has since been used in this field of supporting students with post-secondary education because it does have a connection. And we'll talk about each of those steps, how we could support students kind of with this framework of thinking about themselves and others as well. So Ikigai, let's take a closer look. Again, is what you love to do, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you could get paid for. So it's this combination of your passion, your mission, your profession, your vocation. All of this comes together to form Ikigai. What I love so much about Ikigai is that it provides this powerful compass when we're doing our work as educators, whether we're teachers or school counselors, because we help students focus, number one, on themselves, thinking about themselves, but then also start focusing on others, how we can be of service to others, and how we might be able to link it to our future goals. It is more important, I feel, now than ever, as we've re-entered students into our school communities, as they've readjusted to being back on a school campus, maybe having more classes than they had before, and really processing the why of education to focus on these strengths and these areas of assets, because so many of our students have been struggling not only with engagement, with their learning and their motivation. It's so powerful to start thinking about themselves and how we can align that to future purpose as well. so many times as a middle school counselor and as a middle school teacher, I'm sure it comes up that our students are disengaged, right? What does that mean? They're not invested in their learning, and it's hard to kind of reel them back in. And I think that this concept of Ikigai directly correlates with how we can motivate students too. Oftentimes we talk about external motivators such as grades, maybe consequences if they're not getting good grades. But wouldn't it be so powerful if we can have students be more intrinsically motivated, where they see their passions and their purpose and their self-expression all come together to support kind of their why as well. So although we all know it's so important to cover college and career readiness from an early age, elementary school, I think middle school in particular is such an optimal time to talk about post-secondary education, career planning. Students are just changing so much. We see such a rapid period of growth with them. And it's so important because they're now forming their identity. They're so intuitive and they're really reflecting about who they are as people and start comparing themselves to other people and other experiences as well. They're so intellectually curious about the world and about themselves. We know that they have a strong need to feel like a part of a group, feel that sense of belonging. And we'll talk about how we could do that and how it aligns to Ikigai as well. Generally, our middle school students are very optimistic and idealistic, and they do want to serve a higher purpose. And we want to definitely connect them to real life situations. They're very receptive to that. So just a really great opportunity developmentally to introduce some of these self-reflective topics as well. I just wanted to touch on this because when we're starting to work with our middle school students, a psychologist, James Marcia, described these kind of 4 identity statuses as we're thinking about our future selves. And I know that I've talked to each one of these 4 students. So maybe you're talking about a student and you're saying like, what do you want to do when you grow up? Well, the identity diffusion student is going to be like, I don't know. I don't care. I haven't thought about it yet. So that's one of our students. And then the other one is the foreclosure student, basically the student that already has their mind made up, not because they've done any research or really thought about it, but because, like my dad's a dentist, so I want to be a dentist, and that's kind of it. Or, there's this cool YouTuber, so I want to be a YouTuber too. So that's that student. And then there's also the identity achievement. Very few of our students in middle school are really at this point, and I would argue that high school students are getting there, but basically they're done the research, they know what they want to do. But most of our middle school students are going to fall in this area right here, the moratorium student. So they're starting just to think about it and they're open to suggestions. So we definitely want to seize that opportunity with our middle school students. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the importance of being culturally competent. I won't go into this very much, but I think just being aware that culture in the United States is very much values individuality over collectivism. And so when we're working with diverse populations, it's important just to keep that in mind too, because there's some cultural values that come to play when we're thinking about post-secondary options and success. For many of our students, they want to serve their community, and that's kind of secondary to their own happiness. But how can I serve my family and my community? Many live in multi-generational households or in multi-ethnic communities where the community is very much a strong part of their identities. Maybe there's like family businesses. And it's so important, especially when we're thinking about our first generation families, what some of those preconceived barriers are. I know in my own personal experience, my family from the beginning said, we can't afford to send you to college. And so I think that for many years, I didn't think that was an option for me. But just being aware that many of our middle school students, when we start talking about college and post-secondary planning, already feel that that is a barrier for them. And they're already maybe thinking, they're not talking to me when we're talking about college because my mom and dad didn't go to college. My siblings haven't gone. And so some students have already decided what their career path or their post-secondary path might be. And so we have real opportunities to to open up the door for many of our students and open up possibilities for them. And so that's just, I wanted to touch upon that. It's super important as we do our work. If you haven't read Middle School Matters by Phyllis Fagel, it's really a great book for both families and educators alike, but I really love this quote. It says, yes, middle school is messy and dramatic and confusing at times, but it's also a perfect time to proactively build character and confidence. And so in my work with Ikigai, I've definitely found that that my goal is to highlight students' strengths and assets and really build that confidence in themselves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the 4 quadrants of Ikigai and provide you many different resources to help students explore what they love, what they're good at, what the world needs, and what they can get paid for. So let's start with what you love. So how do you know what you love? You understand what your strengths are, you understand your interests, and you understand your values. And you start thinking about, like, what problems do I want to solve someday, and what careers are in that field of the problems that I want to solve. I personally think, and I think it's safe to say that most educators think that everyone has their own unique strengths and interests that can be cultivated both in school and outside of school. And there's so much power in identifying what our strengths are and what makes us unique. And also to start thinking about what our values are, and then how that drives kind of our place in the world. So important. So there's many different ways to start thinking about our personal strengths. One really simple activity is to play a short YouTube video. I have 3 different ones here for you, different lengths, not very long at all. And just have a reflective activity with students about, what are you thinking about your own strengths? Many students that I've talked to in middle school have never really thought about it. And the students that I'm most concerned about are the ones that can't even think of one thing that they're good at, one personal strength, whether it's a character strength or just maybe some interests outside of school. But here are 3 really easy videos to show and kind of reflect with students to start them thinking about that. There's also a really great activity, which is hyperlinked at the bottom, that you can do with students. It kind of models for you what you would do to start thinking, have students thinking about their strengths and their interests and values as well. I'm going to see if I could skip this because I think it'll want to play the videos, but you have access to them as well. Okay, perfect. When we're talking about personality strengths, some of your sites or districts might already have curriculum where students can take maybe a strengths assessment, like a Thrively is one that we've used in my district in the past. If your schools don't have them or your districts don't, those cost money. They're prepaid curriculum. The 4 links on the left are free resources that you can bring into your school and work with students. And they are, like I said, they're free. They're really simple to use. If you click on the image, it'll take you to the different sites as well. But again, something easy for them to use and to access as well. So VIA characters, and I mentioned it in the previous slide, what I really like about them as well is they have an actual assessment that you could use with students with disabilities, which is super powerful because it could be like incorporated into IEP meetings and the such. But here they've identified 24 personality strengths. Even something like this, you kind of present it on a slide and start thinking about having students think about, okay, maybe to pick your top 5. I know I had this printed out and laminated in my office. So when students, I just asked them what their strengths were and they couldn't think of anything, I gave them the visual and then they could kind of think about it and use that, like, oh yeah, I'm really curious, or I'm super honest, or, I consider myself a kind person, whatever it may be. So that's hyperlinked for you so that you can talk to students about that. I love all these. I love the visuals, and some are like, oh yeah, I'm pretty funny. So humor might be one of their strengths as well. There's super easy activities in the resource folder that you can take with your students as well, like a interest inventory, strengths exploration, or maybe just a tree and have them branch off and say, what of those strengths are. Maybe the tree in conjunction with the VIA list, the visual of the 24 character strengths. Super easy activities to really start getting students to think about what they're really good at and what their strengths are as well. So I know many of our middle school students have no idea, number one, what the word values means. We don't really talk to students about values. But it's so important as we start thinking about career planning as well as, what's important to us and how does that guide what we do as students and kind of in our lives as well. So I have a couple of resources for you as well if you want to start talking to students about values and maybe how that aligns with their strengths as well. And just a side note, the order that I'm kind of going in on this presentation is kind of the order that in my head I process with students as well in terms of what I want to cover with them. Of course, we don't always have access to students all the time to cover these things, but definitely one great place to start is strengths. Maybe you skip values and then you go into our next thing, which is maybe career interest inventory and career values. So this is a really great activity as well. When we talk about personal values versus career values, here's a really great website where I believe there's 24 career values where students can drag and drop into whether it's important, very important for them. They kind of have neutral feelings, and then they can kind of print that out and self-reflect about it. But that's such a really great way to either do as a whole class activity, maybe a small group. As a whole class activity, you can have students work with a partner and kind of process, like, what are your top 3 career values? Are you seeing any patterns in what's important to you? And how can you kind of work those values, or how does it inform your day-to-day in school? So just another activity for you to do with your students as well. School counselors should be very familiar with Holland's theory of career choice. If you're not a school counselor, it basically says that people want to work in careers where they can highlight their personalities and that aligns with their strengths and values. And so many of the interest inventories out there align with the R.I.A.S.E.C scores, which are aligned with the Holland's theory of career choice. So these are the R.I.A.S.E.C scores here. And there's so many different ways to incorporate R.I.A.S.E.C. One of my favorite activities that I've done at my middle school site is playing the Holland's party game. There's a link here for you for the instructions on how to play that. But basically, you don't have to do anything online quite yet. You could just have an organic conversation and put posters around the room and have students kind of go where they feel like that most identifies with, and maybe have a list of possible careers in that, like realistic field, conventional, all of those different ones. So just another resource for you in terms of R.I.A.S.E.C. And we'll come back because so many different resources are also starting to align them with the R.I.A.S.E.C scores. And what I love about that is that it gives us a common language when we're talking about like post-secondary planning as well. So it's definitely something that has been used by a lot of our different resources. So when we start thinking about doing like an interest inventory, the California Career Zones has some really great and engaging lessons. You could either do the interest profiler, which is a little bit longer, or the quick assessment. In the resource folder, I did this activity in an English language learner class. So there's a presentation that you can use. I believe I've hyperlinked the resources in Spanish as well. So that's available for you as well. So one thing that I've really learned in terms of talking with students, and I know I'm going super fast, I just want to be mindful of time. Please feel free to add any questions in the chat. And again, this is super organic. Feel free to interrupt if you'd like. But one of the things that I've learned in my work with middle school students and with students in general is, as well-meaning adults, we often say, hey, what do you want to do when you grow up? But I've really shifted the questions that I ask students and really noticed of change in the responses that I get. So starting to ask questions like, what do you feel the most confident doing? Or what do you do when you're not doing homework? What do you love to do when you're not in school? Those kind of questions really open our eyes up to what our students' experiences are outside of school, and some of the things that they're really interested in and maybe have explored, whether it's sports or instruments or whatnot. Or the opposite can be true. It can really share with us maybe the lack of opportunities that some of our students have had to kind of explore their interests. And for many reasons, a lot of times there's financial barriers. A lot of families can't afford to buy their student an instrument or send them to soccer camp or whatnot. And so, depending on what community you work in, just being mindful of how we pose our questions, because a lot of students maybe don't have those opportunities. But when we notice those things, we have an opportunity to connect them to our school, to clubs or other activities. So just something to think about. And also, I invite you to start shifting some of those questions from like, what do you want to do when you grow up, to like, what do you love doing? Tell me a little bit more about you. Another wonderful question to ask students is like, what problems do you want to solve? As I mentioned before, when it comes to this middle school age of development, they're still so optimistic and really do want to make the world a better place. But they don't really have time to process like what problems they want to solve in the world. Maybe they're really into some social issues, or want to support the environment or help rescue animals. Whatever it may be, there's a great activity where you can have students do as a whole class again, or as a small group, think about some of those problems that they want to solve and how it can align to their skills. ASCA has a really great resource on career conversation starters. This is available in both English and Spanish, and it's questions and conversation starters that you can ask students, you can have ask families, and maybe ask the community as well. So definitely take a look at those when you're thinking about maybe even some resources that you can share with families when they're starting to support their students in thinking about life after high school. So those are a great resource for you as well. So now that you've identified what student strengths are, now that they've thought about it and they're like, oh yeah, I'm pretty good at this and that, and I'm very humorous, what do you do with this information? Well, I would recommend that you not sit on it, and I recommend and encourage students to share it with their families, and you share them with their parents and guardians. One thing that I do, and I feel that has been really powerful when I've run SST meetings and 504 meetings, is taking the time to at the beginning to highlight some of the students' identified strengths. It's so powerful, especially in these meetings that are by nature kind of deficit-based, the area of students that need additional support in, and not so strengths-based. But I think it's really powerful when a student themselves shares what their strengths are and what they're really good at, for teachers that might not know and for their families as well. I think taking a note of what these are, especially some of our students that are struggling academically or behaviorally, as a reminder to them that they are good at something. Right. So this is a form, I've hyperlinked it for you, that I just created. I try to meet with students before, like I said, an SST or a 504 meeting, do this kind of like pre-interview with them, and I ask them some simple questions like, what are your strengths? What do you like about school? Maybe what's hard? What motivates you? Feel free to take this back, modify it for your school sites, but the information shared on here, I'll ask the student, hey, is it okay if I bring this up in the meeting? And generally they're totally okay with it. And there's definitely some pride there when they're talking about their strengths as well. So just the special considerations when you're working with diverse populations as well, when we're talking about a concept like an Ikigai. So far, I've shared kind of a lot of different resources and a lot of different ways that you can go. But just some things that I found in my own delivery of college and career readiness lessons in general is just visuals are super helpful for whenever possible. If you have a visual up that students can reference, and pairing them with someone that has kind of got it to help model what you're looking for, and just consider the developmental level of your student as well. But I would encourage you always, who doesn't want to hear what their strengths and assets are, to support every student. When we're talking about like MTSS and Tier 1, right, we mean every student. So there's ways to modify our lessons to support every one of our students as well. So let's go on to the next section, what you are good at. So how do we know what we're good at? Well, through experience, practice, and skill development, by building a growth mindset, by studying models of success and finding opportunities to refine and apply our essential skills. And I'll go over what that means in a second. So as middle school students, how do you know what you're good at, right? By experience, by being involved in extracurriculars and clubs, sports, electives, so many different ways for students to start thinking about, reflecting, and practicing what their skills are. Like I said, many of our students, especially our lower socioeconomic students, have barriers to accessing these things outside of school. So supporting them and making that connection can be really, really powerful as well. As educators, we often talk to our students about a fixed and a growth mindset, even things that we love to do that we really want to cultivate, whether it's a sport or, technology, whatever it is that our students are into, that doesn't mean that it's going to be easy, even though they're really into it. Oftentimes what I've found is that when students hit a roadblock where they're kind of struggling, they might give up and say like, yeah, I guess that wasn't for me. I don't know if you've ever asked a student like what their favorite class is. Middle school students often will say the class that they're getting the best grade in. So they've kind of equated like good grade with I'm good at it, where we really want them to know that just because something that they really enjoy is hard doesn't mean that they should give up on it. So just starting to plant that seed for our students is super important. As educators, as counselors, as teachers, we have this opportunity to highlight models of success. And what that is just providing students with a model of something that they can attain. So important if we're doing like a career fair or a career chat, or bringing outside people into our schools to talk about their career fields, is that we model also diversity. Because what I found too, right, our students can't become what they can't see. They don't strive to become something that they don't see themselves in. And so the more that we can bring people of color, of diverse genders in a different variety of careers to highlight what they do and how they attain their success for our students, it's so powerful, especially at this middle school level when they're trying to kind of form their identity and think about their future plan, and they want to see themselves in someone. So just another tip for you as well. The San Diego workforce has these great visuals on essential skills. If you teach a CTE class, if you teach any class, and as counselors as well, something that I think about, these are things that we're working with our middle school students in as it is, but I love how this connects to like the real world working skills, what we call also employability skills. So things such as emotional intelligence, communication, critical thinking, dependability. Are you turning in your homework assignments on time? Are you following through with what you're going to say that you're going to do? And resourcefulness. So this is hyperlinked for you here. They have a rubric and posters for you to use and also talk to students about, and start planting the seeds, right? In these awesome essential skills, life skills, really. There's these great videos from Kevin Fleming. This one I've actually played with 8th grade students in the past, and it really talks about those employability skills. It's hyperlinked here for you, and this is just one of a 4-part series of videos that you can incorporate into your college career readiness lessons as well. All right, what the world needs. So we've talked a little bit about like student strengths, what their interests are, career inventory, excuse me. And so students are now starting to think about, okay, I know who I am, I know what my values are, I know what the interest inventory says might align with that, but how do they know what the world needs? And so it's super important for middle school students, when we're starting to talk about them, to start planting the seeds of kind of realistic goals and aspirations as well. And one way of doing that is really thinking about what are those problems that they want to solve, and kind of what that labor market looks like in the area. I know those are words, labor market, that students are going to be like, what does that mean? And I'll talk about how to make it a little bit more accessible. So again, California Career Zones has this industry sector exploration area that you can dive into with them as well. 8th grade students, maybe 7th grade students, are not too young to start thinking about, like, this is a great resource, and it kind of looks adultish, and it is. But when we talk about like high paying jobs, fast growing jobs that are in our area, it's super important. You know, not YouTubers aren't a fast growing job in our area. And so maybe start planting the seed on some of what are those other careers that they maybe haven't even thought about. So just another resource for you to use. So the labor market, when it comes to students and how we can introduce it, is just understanding kind of the jobs that are popular in our area and that our community needs. So if our students want to stay living in San Diego, what are those jobs that our community needs that that they can get training in different fields? And so here, the San Diego Workforce has come up with these priority sectors when it comes to careers. So you can read them here. It's hyperlinked for you as well. But I want to show you some awesome visuals that come out of them. They have these posters, and in each of those priority sectors, it has these posters that align not only with the R.I.A.S.E.C score, but also with the R.I.A.S.E.C score and possible careers. So like if a student got a helper, maybe they might want to be a customer service representative in this field as well. It talks about how much they can expect to earn and kind of what the education level would be using those diploma hats. So just really easy visuals for our students to see and really start thinking about. So I really love those, the posters that they created as well. So what you could get paid for. Well, throughout these career interest inventories and these conversations, students are already starting to think about what they get paid for. But I wanted to talk about some other areas that maybe we don't talk to students so much about as well, like what the different careers are in the different income levels for the different careers, understanding what it kind of costs to live in the real world. Sometimes a lot of our students don't really have a concept of cost and kind of what it will cost to like rent an apartment or lease a car, buy a house, those kind of things. They don't really know realistically what those things cost, and starting to have them think about that, and also what it means to have a quality of life. So I'll talk a little bit about that as well. So again, these are back to the posters from the San Diego Workforce. So for each of those sectors, they'll have this, what I can do, for example, in advanced manufacturing and the different fields in these areas, and also like the expected wage. So super interesting because it has a spectrum of different degrees and wages, and you don't have to be like an advanced engineer. There's different entry-level positions as well that we can expose them to. California Career Zones has this choose your lifestyle and pick your salary survey that students can take. I always think it's super fascinating because they'll go through their ideal lifestyle choices. Yes, I want to live by the beach. I want to own my house and own my car. And then it comes out with the totals for affording that kind of life. And they're like, oh my goodness, that doesn't really align with the career choice that I was thinking about before. But just another tool for you to start planting those seeds for students to start thinking about realistically how what they can do in school align with their future goals and aspirations. So as we talk about middle school, we don't really talk to them about kind of their quality of life. But I think it's super important as we talk to them about what they want to do in the future is, does it align with what your personal strengths are, your skill set, your values? We don't think about like, how many hours am I going to work, right? Is this a job that is it a 9 to 5, or is it where I'm on for 24 hours and off for 24 hours, right? Because so many different careers don't fit that 9 to 5 schedule. What is my work environment going to be like? Do I get to work outside because I love to be outside? Or am I going to be behind a desk all day? I really do not like that, right? So starting to think about some of those things. Do they get to travel? Or do they just, are located in one location? So just planting those seeds for our students to think beyond the money aspects of it and more about quality of life. Because as adults, we've somehow really thought about that when we're thinking about maybe another career opportunity, like, oh, do I want to take on more responsibility or whatnot? So never too early to start thinking of that when it comes to our students as well. So as I'm starting to wrap up, really the goal when it comes to thinking about post-secondary education, preparing our students for life after high school, it's not only that they're college and career ready, but that they're future ready. And how wonderful is it that we have the opportunity to talk to students about these really important things about themselves. And our students are in middle school really are thinking about themselves too, and oftentimes in a critical lens. How great is it if we can start highlighting a lot of their strengths and assets as well? So some practical tips on ways that you can take Ikigai back to your school sites. I know that was a lot of information, but after I saw the presentation with Jewel, I absolutely did not go back and like transform my school counseling program at all. I just took little pieces that I could incorporate into what we were already doing as a school site. One of the first things that I did was just start using the term Ikigai when it came to introducing what I do as a school counselor and kind of what my values are and why I do what I do. I printed out this Ikigai visual and just had it in my office and just referenced it when talking with students as well. So I invite you, if you want to start thinking about bringing the concept of Ikigai, is sharing it with your colleague, sharing it in a presentation slide, just as a slide of, okay, we're going to do this inventory now, and this is how this aligns. This is what I really want you to think about and why it's important. I talk about Ikigai when I was doing course selection, talking about some after school activities with students, trying to connect them with other opportunities beyond their classroom experiences as well. I also, like I said, always bring it to student meetings. I think there's so much power in that, in sharing the amazing things that our students are doing, what they're interested in with their families, in the context of some of their struggles as well. I think that leverages who they are as a person beyond their struggles, beyond their hardships as well. And I always try to bring it into conversations too when I'm having with administrators about my work and how I hope to support students through my work as a school counselor as well. So I'm going to close with this quote that I really love. The meaning of life is to find your gift, and the purpose of life is to give it away. And as a school counselor, as an educator, I'm so fortunate that I get to do this work and I get to support others in finding their own purpose, their own Ikigai, their own passion. And I hope that you walked away with maybe one or two things that you can take back to your school sites. I have my contact information here. If you're going through any of the resources or the slide deck and have questions about how you can incorporate it into your classrooms, into your school counseling program, into your work as an AVID coordinator, please let me know. As you can tell, I love talking about this. I wish I had more time, but please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm going to stick around. Feel free to unmute, type in any questions in the chat. I'm happy to support you in this work. Thanks for being here. You're welcome. So glad you came.